It is good to have a full house. We will pass the plate in about 5 minutes because now is the time. No, I'm just kidding. I think a few years ago we were going to do that, maybe had to. So welcome to committee. This is one of the highlights of the year. And we thank Mr. Williamson for having you all here so early to talk about all the good things that are going on. And we'll have our committee commodity commissions speaking in just a few moments. But first, we will do bill introductions, and we look for bill introductions. And first, we'll call on Casey Olson from Boy, it's a long day. Kelsey Olson from the Department of Agriculture. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Kelsey Olson. I serve as the Deputy Secretary with the Kansas Department of Agriculture. I request to introduce Bill 24 RS 2497. This bill is in regards to the Pesticide Act, which the department administers. The updates to the act are related to the 2017 EPA updates for required state plan changes. It will enhance the training certification for private applicators as well as commercial applicators, and would also enact additional civil penalty authority for anyone who violates the Pesticide Act, which currently only pertains to commercial applicators. So hopefully that's what did I check all the boxes for? Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up. Perfect.
Any questions? Seeing none, bill is introduced. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other bill introductions? I have one. It is 24 RS 2641, dealing with foreign ownership of land. It is a committee bill, I guess, requested by the chairman. I'm not sure exactly how we do that, but that's it. Any questions?
Did someone ask you to do that?
Me?
Wasn't our Attorney General?
No, no, not on this one.
Just asking.
So I mean, if we need to, so since no questions, I will just give you a brief explanation. It is very similar to the bill we did last year and did not vote on. We did have a hearing. There is some minor tweaks that we needed to do, either for a state constitutional situation or whatever, and it's a starting spot. So that is, so it's not a complete rewrite. I hear there may be some other ones, but this is it's very similar to what this committee did last year, at least as far as to have the hearing. Other questions? Seeing none, the bill is introduced. A couple of quick notes before we get to our reports. You will see Dana has sent the email, the annual report from GMD's per the House Bill 2279 for their reports that were requested. So you can go on the drive and find those if you would like to read those. Also, you will find, hopefully at your desk with all the treats, you will find some hints for viewing testimony, as that has been updated to where it's now, if you go on the Kansas Legislature website, click on the Ag Committee, and then click on Standing, go to Agriculture, Natural Resources, and then you will be able to find that either from hopefully upcoming meetings as we receive them or past meetings. So, and it says testimony for the current meeting will not be appearing until it's released to the website, probably a couple hours before the meeting is scheduled to begin. So, but that's why if you want to bring your computers or whatever, also still try to have them on the screens if possible. Those are the announcements that I have until we get to the end of the day today. Anything else that we need before we get started? Okay, seeing none. Again, this is the day of the Commodity Commission reports, and we have four that are by statute come and present, and so this is the ones that through the state checkoffs and so on that run, and then they make their earlier this morning they made presentations to the Senate Ag Committee, and so they're here with us today after a very refreshing hurry up and wait day here in the State House. So at least y'all weren't outside breaking ice. So I guess you can thank us for that if you want. So with that, we will go in no particular order other than just the way I guess I picked it. We will start with the Kansas Corn Commission and Kent Moore from IUCA. Welcome back to committee. Good to see you.
To be up here today and address the committee. You're correct, northwest part of Pratt County and IUCA address. I just looked. It is 41 degrees in IUCA, Kansas, and I think that probably means the townspeople are rejoicing in the streets. I can't confirm that, but it looks like at least above freezing, and maybe we can survive a couple more cold days at the end of the week, and looks like next week's quite a bit more moderate. I chair the Kansas Corn Commission, have done that for a few years now, and it's my task today to give you a little bit of an update on 2023 and our outlook into the future. With me today is Sue Schulte. She's our Director of Communications, and also have Taylor Williamson. He's here, started with Kansas Corn this past year, kind of more in our policy, directive, legislative, liaison type kind of stuff. So again, very, very appreciative of being here. 2023, a much, much better corn crop than 2022. Was it perfect? No, not in any way, shape, or form. We were up about 20% compared to our production in 2022. So for 2023, the state of Kansas produced 613 million bushels of corn. That put us something around 7th, 8th or so nationally in corn production. Usually we're a tick higher than that. But, you know, I think if you ask most Kansas corn producers, they'll recognize that 2023 was better, obviously, than 2022. We did receive some moisture. There are places in southwest Kansas and western Kansas that received a tremendous amount of rain over a 8-10 week period. You'll hear more about that, I'm sure, later. But you know, better at the same time with a lot of those precipitation events in the western half of the state. Along came some severe weather, some hail, some high winds, some things like that that definitely took a toll on crop production. My day for my hailstorm was July 16th. So just you take the punches and you put the seed in the ground in the spring and you nurture it, and then fall comes and we're always blessed to get what we get. And it's just part of farming is putting up with the weather. As you guys are all very well aware, the Corn Commission's core mission is to increase corn use and increase the visibility and education and try to impress upon people the importance of corn production in the state and agriculture in general in the state. Obviously, part of the task of the commission is to continue our work in the ethanol field. We continue to do that by supporting the infrastructure development throughout the state. We also are in a kind of a consortium of Kansas, Nebraska, and Missouri related to kind of pooling some resources from those states together and trying to help ethanol infrastructure development in the state of California. Because much of the ethanol and stuff that we produce in the state, whether it's, you know, no matter what it's produced from, whether it be grain or sorghum, is headed, you know, a viable market and a good market for that ethanol is the state of California. So it's our intent and our effort to try to assist that state in recognizing and adopting more ethanol blends in their fuels. One thing that Kansas Corn's really proud of is our education program. We started that a few years ago when we felt like that we just needed to boldly go down that path of making our students in the state of Kansas more aware of agriculture, the corn industry, and how it impacts everybody's life in the state of Kansas. And the way we did that is that we have developed a curriculum that, they're clear, starting at K through 12, basically, of finding teachers that were interested in becoming kind of core teachers in those subjects, and then in turn training other teachers to use the curriculum that we provide. We provide the curriculum, we provide the lab supplies or whatever's needed to complete the curriculum as designed. But we've had great success. This past year, we've reached over 100,000 students. We've got, over 2,600 Kansas educators that take advantage of those programs. We feel like that's been extremely successful. And we don't really target one area or one part of the state over another. I mean, we recognize that education process even extends into rural schools. It's always interesting to know what you might conceivably think that a rural student knows. Well, you can't take that for granted. So we obviously we've put a lot of effort in the urban side. We have a great relationship with USD 259 in Wichita, but don't by any means don't think that we limit where we try to utilize those commission dollars to increase education and outreach to further educate students about agriculture and about corn production in the state. Obviously, we continue to support research at the university level and through private enterprise. 2022 was such a production year disaster that we had to, in fiscal year 23, kind of reinvent the wheel a little bit and scale back on some of the expenditures that we normally would have had we had a more typical crop. So we had to do that. We spent less money in regards to the money that we send to U.S. Grains Council for market development. We sent less money to U.S. Meat Export Federation. We had less money to distribute. So looking forward to maybe getting back more of in line with what we consider being a more stable budget, but one thing the commission has done over the years is tried to have, I thought about this earlier, I was going to say rainy day fund, and then you think, well, why would the Corn Commission have a fund for times such as this? Well, it's because it wasn't a rainy day. So I can't call it a rainy day fund because it wasn't a rainy day. So but we have done a good job of trying to have some reserve funding that would ensure that our core mission and our core objectives were met even in years that we didn't have as many bushels to receive assessments from. So in closing, I mean, you've got the typical things that you get on these reports. You got our audit, you've got our yearly budget summary and stuff of that nature. Again, I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here. And with that, I would entertain any questions that you guys might have.
All right, Kent, very good. Questions about the Corn Commission? Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. How would a teacher go about contacting Kansas Corn if they wanted to do something in their classroom?
Right. I guess probably the first thing I would do would just be I know that if you just go to Kansas Corn website, there is links to get people connected to Dr. Sharon Thielen, who has developed and runs that program for us. And our team of people have been phenomenal at responding to those requests and then making sure boots hit the ground and we get them the supplies and the things that they need to complete the task of getting that curriculum into the classroom.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Representative Minix.
I'm going to take advantage here. I appreciate your presentation. When's the next up in the corn market?
Yeah, it wasn't today. That's a great question. I mean, obviously, we always in ag somewhat struggle with the pricing structure that we have. Obviously, we've seen a downturn in commodity prices, whether it's wheat, corn, soybeans, sorghum. Good question. Inputs for 2024 are better. Our cost of production has gone down a little bit, and fertilizer costs and things of that nature are better. Anybody familiar with ag realizes that anything with red or green paint or repairs or anything like that is still astronomically too high. But at least on the fertilizer end of things, we're a little bit better off than we have been the past few years. And I always think, well, for a Kansas corn farmer, what I'm really hoping for is serious production problems in the Corn Belt. But that's mean to say, but that's just the way the world turns. And but who knows? But it's an excellent question. I'm sure there's somebody out there with an answer, but it isn't me.
Well, I appreciate your answer, and I hope my family members, my partners who give me a hard time about my marketing sometimes, it's easier to see hindsight.
Oh, yeah.
But our commodity markets have been trending down.
Exactly.
And I think they're anticipating a more normal return to moisture and over a large area. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. So things at times have been extremely volatile. And it's difficult to market these days. It's difficult to produce, and it's also difficult to market. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Representative Schlangen-Siepen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation.
Yep.
What does foreign market development look like? I mean, practically, do you get in a Learjet and fly off to France, or how does that work?
Yeah, okay, so one thing that just pops into my head kind of right off the top is Kansas Corn specifically supported market development in the country of India. So how did we do that? The U.S. Grains Council has offices throughout the world. Well, they have established offices in India. So the Grains Council came to the Corn Commission and said, hey, we have this one specific project where we want to show producers in that country how to utilize corn in their feedstuffs, and so we targeted that. We sent money directly to that project, and in turn could see the fruition of at least getting them to the point of understanding how they might utilize our product into the future. So just things like that. It's baby steps. It's not by golly, we made a contact and we sold them billions upon billions of bushels of corn. It's getting your foot in the door, and then just hoping that you open it a little bit further and further and further over time.
Agriculture and natural resources, the issue of the session last year was water. I think it spilled over, and that's probably the number one issue as well.
Yeah.
And many of the things that we deal with in the water committee, and it spills over a little bit here. And I know this is not necessarily a policy situation with the commission, but as you look at us moving forward with words like conservation, sustainability, and trying to get more or continue where we are growing a crop, probably with less water. What has been going on within the commission and from those you and farmer leaders in having those discussions? Because, when we have all these, what's the number one target? Irrigators. What's the number two target? Corn growers that irrigate.
Yeah, that's true. I think that obviously the state has directed more attention to water resources, and then last year through the legislative process, put us in a position to put dollars to work in conservation measures. And to me, what that means is that there are multiple tools that I can use to try to be as efficient as I can be in producing a bushel of corn. And the thing to recognize is that I fully believe and that our farm over time has gotten more and more efficient, and that's always been the goal. And, no different than, just, what do I do to determine whether or not to run a center pivot? Well, I look at yesterday's evapotranspiration. I look at the monitors that I have on throughout center pivots that basically have a tensiometer on and measure the stalk diameter of that corn plant as it traverses itself through the day. And little things like that I can use to more efficiently and hopefully make smarter use of that water when I've put it to beneficial use. And all those things are helpful tools. It doesn't provide a magic wand that makes everything just perfect. But I think the monies that the state has kind of directed towards those types of things will help myself and other producers continue to utilize the technologies that we have today and the technologies that we know are coming in the future. And like the next one I want to try is an autonomous eye that basically travels along the center pivot and takes, instead of having that tensiometer in that spot over there, I'll have eyes on the machine itself that are gauging crop progress and conditions and those things that makes that trip around the circle. So all of those things are things that producers are eager for, I feel, and I think that the state's made will be making a wise investment in those types of conservation efforts.
Okay, very good. Other questions? I assume you're coming back to the Water Committee then tomorrow. No. Other questions for Mr. Moore? Yes, Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony.
Okay.
Is Kansas a net exporter of corn out of the state or net importer?
No, we're basically a net importer, have been for a long, long time. When you look at corn use within the state, I mean, obviously you have cattle feed. I mean, number one has been forever. Will continue to be the primary use for well into the future. But one thing that happened in step by step with the development of the ethanol industry in the state of Kansas was, well, then the livestock industry turned right around and recognized that the distiller's grain that's a byproduct of that ethanol process was fantastic for feedstuffs. So when you look at it from the standpoint of how do we utilize the bushel of corn that we produce, it basically leaves the state in a higher value than it began, whether that's through a boxed beef or whether that's through a gallon of fuel that has blended ethanol in it. So yeah, we're a net importer, and we'll continue to be. But like I said, that's been the case for a number of years.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We got three more. So up next, we'll have Ron Oldie from the Kansas Soybean Commission from Palmer. Welcome back to committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good afternoon, members of the Kansas House Committee. I am Ron Oldie, and I am chairman of the Kansas Soybean Commission. And I live in Palmer, Washington County. And I'd like to report, last year, Palmer is a town of 200, counting cats and dogs. This year I got to report it's 202, and the expansion is not from cats and dogs. So, anyway, I represent District 4 on the Kansas board, And in our board, we have 7 elected commissioners and 2 appointed, or 2 at large, which are appointed. Our process, you know, they are elected, and we have to go through the Kansas Department of Agriculture to sit on and be a member of the commission. It's all volunteer time. None of them receive any salary, and so we appreciate all the time and effort that they have to put into this because it is time consuming. I know a lot of the members are always told, well, it's only 3 meetings a year. Well, yeah, we may have 3 meetings, but man, there's a lot of phone calls and emails, and so there is a time commitment. All soybean farmers participate in the checkoff, and how that price, well, the checkoff dollars are derived from the sale of the beans at the first sale, and they collect 0.5% of the price. I know you look a little confused, so I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of an example to kind of help. Let's just say, for easy figuring, beans are at $10 a bushel. So 0.5% is 5 cents. So half of that, or 2.5 cents, stay in the state under KSC management. The other 2.5 cents go to the United Soybean Board, which has 78 directors and 30 states participate. So that is how the money is collected, and that is also how it is distributed. In the fiscal year of 23, which ran from July of 22 to June of 23, we had a total collections of I'm going to round the numbers here, of 4.7 million. We spent over 7.9 million. We had to utilize reserves that we had to keep and maintain the investments that we have invested in. And one of the investments, which was really pretty exciting, was our investment into the Ag Innovation Center at K-State, in which we feel very definitely which need to be done because we need to modernize our agricultural program. And in May, we attended the groundbreaking ceremony there at the North Agronomy Farm. The amount that we invest every year depends upon also the price and then also the amount of bushels that we raise. And the average in 23, the average price was $14.16, and which is $1 lower than what the price was in 22. And the price peaked in July, and it hit a low of $15.12 in October. And currently now it's at least $1 less than what it was then. And so price is a big factor, but price doesn't matter when you don't have anything to sell. And we all seen some of that this past summer. Like the others have reported, we got hit by the weather as well. And it was pretty devastating in some areas. And hopefully, we're getting a kind of an old-fashioned winter here, so maybe the tide has kind of turned a little bit. Let's hope so. But for the 23 growing season, we produced 104.8 million bushels on a little over 4 million acres, which is significantly down than past couple of years. But that ranked us this year at about 13th, which is lower than normal. But our average yield was projected at 26 bushel this year. Last year it was at 27. So you can see our production has dropped. Some of our highlights that I feel that we've had this year is well, some of the projects that we've got in climate resiliency, yield preservation, planting dates, soil nutrition, soil health, and also fertilizer optimization. And, you know, another factor too that I'm excited about is once our crop is grown, we've got to have a place for it. And these are some things that's really exciting. And one of them is going to be we're going to have a renewable fuel hub, and the construction is continuing here at the Bartlett plant in Montgomery County. And that has potential to be pretty big, honestly. And another big factor is the Great Bend terminal that has a short line that can move these beans to that terminal or to that crushing plant. And this is expected to be becoming operational here in the next several months. Adding to this, there's a new crush facility. It's called Assure Sustainable Fuels. It's a Calgary-based company that announced in December it's going to construct a sustainable aviation fuel facility at Cherryville, and which is very near to that crush location. And who knows where this may go? I mean, it's got some real potential that we feel. Another, I feel, exciting thing is Schooler Grain at Goodland. They had basically a canola facility. Now they want to ramp it up, so they also want to bring beans into that facility. So there's another possibility of an expansion there. So to me, the soybean industry looks awfully promising here for the state of Kansas. Another thing I might touch on too was, well, are we going to have enough demand and then to meet all these projects? So I asked the Kansas Department of Agriculture for a flow chart. And looking over the past years, a lot of our production went north to the PMW. But now this is changing with these crush plants and the renewable fuel standards. A lot of these beans are going to stay here in Kansas, and which is just a big plus. And then also I can't forget, a lot of our beans go to Mexico. We've got a lot of poultry and pork that goes down there. So really the outlook here for Kansas beans, I mean, really looks very promising, probably the promising that I can ever recall. And so another highlight each year, KSC, we host, professionals from around the world to showcase Kansas agriculture. And we've had some, representatives from the Hunan region in China, and also in Shannon feed technology, which we're over. And so this also helps build relationships with our export partners. It's difficult to give you all the details of all our successes, but those are some of them which I've presented to you. On our administrative budget, our budget includes the cost of collections, audits, elections, and other commission expenses. We have an outside auditing firm that comes in and does our financial records every year, and they're also every 5 years they're audited by the United Soybean Board, and also with USDA. So the auditing that's done, believe me, your I's got to be dotted and your T's got to be crossed, and so it's an undertaking for the audits. And so this kind of concludes my report. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and representing the 16,000 Kansas soybean producers. So one thing I did kind of forget, our administrator, Caleb Little, is here in the back. So I'll be glad to entertain some questions, if any.
Questions, Mr. Oldie? I have.
Oh, come on now.
We've got plenty. I just want to give everybody else the opportunity.
Okay.
So, no. This next generation soybean, soybean oil, the crush plants, we've heard about it for a long time. We made that other step now of many companies have made big investments.
Yes.
Are we overbuilding? Do you think we have the capacity to keep these things going?
As of right now, I've got to say yes. I mean, with the RFS standards, the renewable fuels, man, it's hard to tell where that might go. You take like California, the cargo plant in Wichita, they can't hardly get enough out there. And so, and with these new plants coming on, what we've got products already established, I think it looks very bright. Yes.
Similar to what I asked Mr. Moore, and from the water issue as well, but, is the commission trying to attack, if that's the right word, how do we look at conserving? Because we know soybeans use a lot of water as well to get a good crop, even though those of us in dryland areas grow them as well. Technology investment have been made. So, kind of talk about that and through all that, are we going to be able to get more acres? I mean, it seems like we talk about it every year about this time and looking at planting, and then when those reports come out, rotations stay about the same, but we continue to hear we need more soybean acres. And so what is being addressed? I mean, I think specifically in Kansas to encourage more acres or make that a bigger part of a rotation?
Well, I think without a doubt, with these additional crush plants, I mean, if you studied and looked at the crush plants that came in and has gotten established, they've created another market. And I think that's probably where some of the acres will come from. Yeah, there's a battle of acres between, well, all of us, and so I'm wondering for this year with wheat acres down, I believe like 6%, if maybe some may come from there. Also, weed control may be another issue. Out west, you have more options with beans than some of the other crops, and so I think that's where some of that will come from. But I think a lot of it still will be demand driven.
Representative Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Oldie. I just want to shout out that Ron is a constituent of mine, and I've been to Palmer, Kansas, and there's probably a stretch to call it 200 people, but I'm very privileged to represent the soybean growers and agriculture in Washington County. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Representative, I appreciate the time that you spend up in our area. Believe me, we appreciate it. Because you do spend time there.
Representative Roth.
Just a kind of a quick question. Are there any soybean growers that are frustrated with the deer population?
I can't think of any.
Okay.
No. Yes. I mean, not only the damage that's done to the crops, but man, the damage that's done to your vehicles. I'm the unfortunate one. I've been so lucky really over the years, I haven't really hit any, but I hit 2 of them in 3 months this past fall with the same pickup. And doggone it, that's, and what am I going to have to build in the front of that thing so it doesn't do so much damage?
Well, in my area, which is Cali County and Sumner counties,
Okay.
The folks that grow soybeans, I mean, they lose entire 80-acre fields, and I mean, and more than that, to the deer population. And so that was just a question that I had. Thank you for answering it.
No, you bet. Well, another thing that just popped in my mind, in the last 2 years, speaking of deer, I've had 1 set of antlers in my planting tractor and another set in my combine. And there's a few dollars there, boy, ladies and gentlemen.
Representative Carlin.
Just to chime in on that, I was talking to car repairmen this week about the cost of repairs on vehicles. I'm thinking of introducing some legislation myself to raise the felony limit on damage to vehicles when somebody hits it with a baseball bat or something. I did that my first year here, and we went from $500 to $1,000, and then later, now I think it's $2,500 or something. But, you know, the cost of repairs, what I'm talking about, it's just the repairs on vehicles. Do you remember what you paid on your truck? Or did you just keep driving it?
No. I was lucky enough, I could drive it. I pulled the bumper out a little bit and pulled the grill away.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate, I could be driving, but it was $3,100 approximately both times.
Wow. And you were able to fix it to drive yourself?
Well, yeah, until I got it,
Until
I got it
fixed.
repaired, because
That's,
it's right
you
smack
know,
there in
and-
Harvest, and that's my main truck, and
So that's something we need to be aware of as well, but good luck to you. Don't do it again.
Representative Schlingensieben.
Just a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, could we create an insurance fund for the Kansas deer population so that in events like this, folks are covered?
I think that would be fine because I know they only carry small bills with them.
That's right.
Yes. So, yes, okay. They carry plastic? I don't know if they hit the right car. But is my mic on? Hello? No. Any other questions? Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Oldie, you made mention in your testimony about the increased processing or crush capacity in Kansas and also the increase for fuel. How does Kansas compare to other states around us as far as development of that? Are we seeing the same kind of growth in infrastructure for those things in other states, or are we a little bit ahead of the curve on that?
well, I know the Dakotas, you know, both states, they've built new crushing facilities here just in the last couple of years. And one of the main reasons that they built them was because their basis was just horrible. And sometimes they were over $1. But now as they're bringing them on, I mean, that basis has dramatically improved. Far as nationwide, I mean, yeah, there is some expansion, but I think Kansas with our location, also the quality of beans that we raise, because of our demographics, we can raise some of the best beans in the nation. I'm talking oil and protein content. And so that gives us an advantage. But we've got markets established, like with Mexico, you know, like I mentioned, in the poultry and in the pork industry down there. That's where a lot of our beans go. Now we're getting into the renewable fuels. And that looks very, very promising. So I think as far as the bean industry, looks very promising for Kansas.
Okay, thank you very much.
The questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Oldie. Appreciate it.
All right. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, we'll move on. And the reason why I say they're hometowns is there's a pattern. These are all farmer leaders, but if don't spend the time now, pay attention, but, you know, find out, you know, how big Iuka is, how big Palmer is. Our next one is from Chase, another big county, so a big town. So Doug Kiesling with the Kansas Wheat Commission. Welcome back.
It's nice to be back here again. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide this annual report from the Kansas Wheat Commission. My name is Doug Kiesling, as said. I'm the past chairman of the Kansas Wheat Commission. I farm in central Kansas and Rice County. I live between Chase and Lyons. Chase is around 250 people, since we're saying it. The Kansas Wheat Commission was established by legislation in '57 to represent states' wheat producers in the wheat state. In areas of research, domestic and international marketing, education, communication. It's funded by the wheat assessment, just as described earlier, which collects 2 cents per bushel of wheat at the first point of sale. The Kansas farmers who grow wheat are stakeholders, and our 9-member commission represents these farmers on the board. In addition to copies of this testimony, we've presented you with a copy of our 23 annual report and our 23 annual audit. Winter wheat production for 23 was estimated at 201.25 million bushels, which is the lowest since 1966, down 17.5% from the previous year's crop and down 45% from the year before. Much of this is due to devastating drought conditions, which have plagued the last several growing seasons. Area for grain was at 5.75 million harvested acres, which was down slightly from the previous year due to abandonment mainly of 29% of planted acres. On my farm, abandonment was 2/3, so, which has been the highest since 1951. Planted acres were up this year to 8.1 million acres, and the yield averaged 35 bushels per acre, which was 7 bushels below the 10-year average. While input costs, as we've talked about, has remained at record high levels for the most part, price per bushel has dipped back to average levels, which is seen before the highs of 21 and 22. This year's crop is looking better than the past 4 or 5 years. I say this on mine because I had a high abandonment rate last year. At this time last year, I could not row any of my wheat because it wasn't up. And so at least I'm thankful for the blessings that it's up this year. So each year, Kansas farmers export roughly half of the Kansas wheat crop, making export promotion through U.S. Wheat Associates essential. U.S. Wheat Associates is an organization of 17 state wheat commissions that leverages farmers and federal foreign market development dollars to promote wheat exports. Overall, wheat exports were down 4% this marketing year, which was June 1 of 22 to May 31st of 23. Hard red winter wheat exports are down 32% from last year, roughly at 188 million bushels. The top customers include number 1, Mexico, number 2, Japan, and number 3, Nigeria. These 3 continue to be steady buyers of hard red winter wheat with us. Because of the importance of exports, trade issues have been in the forefront of our efforts over the last year. We believe it is in our best interest of wheat farmers to renegotiate trade agreements and maintain relationships with international customers. Kansas serve in trade policy leadership positions within U.S. Wheat Associates and the National Association of Wheat Growers. Several others of our members serve in other groups. I also work on food aid, as the chairman knows. All of our efforts in the state to improve the productivity and profitability of Kansas wheat farmers continue to center around research. Kansas Wheat Innovation Center, which is paid for by farmers through the wheat assessment, is designed from the ground up to be the nation's home for wheat-based collaboration and innovation, including conducting cutting-edge research in wheat variety development. These are just a few examples how the Kansas Wheat Commission is working on behalf of farmers to spur innovation to make a positive difference in our industry. If you haven't had a chance to visit the Wheat Innovation Center, which is right across from the football stadium there in Manhattan, we invite you to tour the facility at any point. Our staff would love to have you. This concludes my report, and I want to thank you again for your support of the wheat state and the wheat commodity. It's always important to share our efforts among all of our commodities, as many of us farmers doing testimony today grow all of these crops like that you're hearing about. So thank you, and I'd entertain any questions.
Questions, Mr. Kiesling? I know we got the hard questions for you, so Representative Schlingensieben.
What has the war in Ukraine done to the wheat market, and has that been an opportunity for us or not?
It's usually a double-edged sword. It's been a positive and a negative. Wheat stocks are at 71 days as of right now, so there's 71 days worth of wheat in the whole world. The United States controls about 45% of that. So you can do the math. There's a month's supply here in the States. That would tell you a couple things. One, the U.S. dollar is high, so we're the last buyer because we're a little more expensive than other places. You asked directly about Ukraine. Ukraine has had troubles shipping products out but the product that they have shipped out is still far as exceeding what they shipped out 10 years ago. So their production has gone up, even with a war. They're down temporarily, but they've been dumping it on the world market at a discounted rate because they can't afford to store it. If I was a farmer there, I wouldn't want to store something that might get blown up.
Yeah.
So they're selling it at a cheaper rate, which keeps prices down in that regard. And of course, even with a war, Russia has sold record amounts of wheat even during this conflict.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Representative Minix?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to try to tie a few things together here a little bit. Some of you that aren't in agriculture, I'll try to describe basis real quickly. A lot of our commodity prices are set at the Chicago Board of Trade, and that's for the entire nation. Basis is basically the difference of what your local market is to what that futures market is. It can be both positive or negative. In the case of soybeans, having crush plants nearby gives a farmer an advantage on their basis. They get a better price than if they have to transport it 300 miles to a processing plant. If we're sending half of the wheat crop outside of the state, we're paying that transportation as farmers. We get that reduced price on the front end. If corn, we're a net importer of that grain, it's coming into our state. There's actually kind of a positive basis because we have the high demand for it. And that's, in my opinion, that's one of the reasons for the increased acres in corn over the last 20-some years. Between the varieties and hybrids, it's also where the market is. Did I describe that somewhat?
Yeah, we have a lot of flour mill capacity in Kansas, so domestic use in Kansas is high, but we are the wheat state. You know, we've had a drought the last 2 years, so we're number 2. That's why I didn't say that in the report, because I didn't want to give credit to North Dakota. But you know, we have to admit that production has been down, acres are down, and so that happens. But, you know, we do a lot of value add, is what you're talking about, is adding value to the farmers through processing locally, and we try that as best we can. And if we could get more flour mills or gluten facilities like the one in your area up and going, that would be great, and we would encourage that.
Thank you very much.
Representative Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned in your report that we are exporting 50% of our production. How has that number trended over the last 20 years, and what is the projection in the years to come?
You know, in honesty, we've always, in the long time that I've been on the Wheat Commission, we've always exported around 50%. So this isn't anything new. The trend has pretty well been there. There are always years where the ratio to the U.S. dollar is a big factor, and which is going on right now with our sales. But it's always around those percentages.
Okay, thank you very much.
Representative Fairchild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to point out that Doug is from my district and Chase and Lyons are in my district, but I guess I'll just ask the same question that Representative Minix asked before in regards to wheat. Do you see any change in the wheat price? Do you think it'll keep falling, or do you think there could be some recovery in the next few months?
Well, you know, I got a second job, so you know that, you know, I obviously don't hit the markets perfect every time. So, you know, it's speculation in many cases. I look at it and I think, geez, if we're down to a couple months worth of supply worldwide, and we're at levels that are second in history to the lowest levels we've ever had, you would think prices would be higher. But worldwide, we've done a great job of, one, producing food, no matter if it's wheat or the other commodities. Worldwide, we've done a great job of producing food as needed, and we've done a good job of transporting it, whether you're talking about commodities like this today or other products that you might buy on an as-needed basis. So I think many of us take advantage of that, and so the price is probably lower than it should be. I didn't answer your question as far as if you sell today, but again, I never sell at the right time either.
Do you have a question? Okay. All right. It's like an auction. If you scratch your ear, I may think you want a question. So, all right, a couple things right quick. You brought up probably an excellent point. The bright spot in the wheat industry in Kansas is 8 miles from my house. As Sarah Pennington said, I can see it from my house. We have a gluten plant that's up and rolling. It's almost all full capacity. About 70 semis are coming in and out of Phillipsburg every day. And the ethanol is working as well, so it's kind of a multifaceted deal. The challenge is, our friends earlier, corn has done such a great job of growing corn in a county that was a wheat county. Now we're a corn county, so trying to come back. And with those gluten plants on Phillipsburg and Russell, we need higher protein wheat. I know K-State is working on that. I'm assuming that investments are being made through the Wheat Commission to work with them on finding varieties at Hayes to grow higher protein wheat. So that, as well as kind of a two-parter, is where are we at with Spring, Soft, Durham, the other varieties that have been tried. How is that going from a investment standpoint to expand and maybe try to bring back some acres? What we just found the report last week. That's a lot of things, but
How many questions did you put in there?
I got 10
They're all
minutes.
good ones, though. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, the Wheat Commission prides itself on putting as many dollars into research as possible. Even in a year where production is down, so our checkoff dollars are down, we've been fortunate to save some money back in past years, and so we continue to maintain or increase research dollars even in years like this where our income is down. We've done that several ways. One, our staff has done an excellent job of coming up with new outside-the-box ideas. We've helped industry in different ways, and industry has been great to work with on plants like that. At Hayes and in Manhattan, the breeders have done an excellent job of coming up with new varieties. When I look around, I've got the opportunity to buy varieties from private companies, from universities here in the state and outside the state, and I'm always impressed with the quality that Kansas produces. And so I'm always, as a farmer, I'm always thankful for that. And then the other thing is, 10, 12 years ago, we built the Wheat Innovation Center. And at the time, we will admit, the board was divided on that. We weren't sure if that commitment in money was going to be worth the millions of dollars we spent of farmer hard-earned money. I was chairman during the time that we built that, and now still being on the board many years later. I'm the old guy on the board. That's funny to me now. And that is, it's really good to see that, because what I'm seeing is a collaboration between farmer checkoff dollars, university, and industry partners. And so the Innovation Center is doing its job, and the amount of funds that are checkoff dollars that are spent are more than being multiplied in ways to bring benefit to Kansas farmers.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, you want to introduce your wheat staff that's with you?
Oh, yes.
We won't call it the chaff, so. Well, no, you want to tell us who they are?
Oh, I did.
I was talking. I'm sorry. Yes.
Marcia is communications, and Shayna is our COG representative, so
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you. You were turning away. No, anyway. Okay, very good. All right, now, the guy who has traveled the farthest, but also lives in an area close to the bigger the population centers that we're talked about today. So let's talk Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission with the new chairman, Brant Peterson. Thanks
Hello,
for being here.
everybody. Thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure to be here. Yes, I am from the metropolis of Johnson, Kansas. I don't count the people in the towns. We have 3 towns, and the county is 2,000 people. So one really small town, one kind of small town, and then the metropolis of Johnson. So, Mr. Chairman, committee members, thank you so much for having us here. The commission groups, we all enjoy coming to do this, even though it is a long drive. I did give myself the Traveled the Furthest award. It's 430 miles for me to get here. And I think I'm standing between you guys and getting out of here, so I'll try to keep it somewhat brief. I live in Johnson, Kansas, the county seat of Stanton County. I grow corn, sorghum, and wheat on both irrigated and dryland acres. I'm joined here today by the Kansas Grain Sorghum Producers Association Chairman Kent Winter. I've got a Grain Sorghum Commission board member, Max Jaden. We have Adam York, staff, and Maddie Meyer, as well as a new, let's see if I get this right, Caroline Wingett. She's a K-State Flinchbaugh Food and Ag Fellow. This is kind of her, I don't know, second day with us or something. Yeah, and she's joined us today. And also we have Sarah Sexton Bowser with the Center for Sorghum Improvement with us. So any technical questions that you have, I will defer. So yeah, I gave myself Traveled the Furthest award. And also, many of you haven't had the opportunity to witness the experience of the wonders of Stanton County weather, main docuseries, primarily because of lack of funding and interest. I'll go ahead and do my best to give you the highlights. So prior to May 13th of this year, the previous 36 months, we had had less than 15 inches of cumulative rain. I do empathize with my brethren that come up here and talk about the drought that they've had, and I say, I think you had a dry year. So 15 inches of cumulative rainfall. It was the ugliest thing that I had ever seen. It was as close as we've had to the Dust Bowl. There were school cancellations just because of dirt blowing. There were people pulling chisels out and chiseling the ground, running old furring ridge. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get down deep enough in the soil to pull up some clods and moisture so that the ground will hold and not blow with wind erosion. And it was hideous. It was devastating. Later this year, last time, I was talking to some sorghum staff, and they were concerned about how many planted acres sorghum was going to have this coming year. And I said, don't worry about it. The projections are wrong. He's like, why is that? I said, there's no wheat from southwest Kansas to Lubbock, Texas. It's going to get planted to something. And most likely it'll get planted to sorghum. I did feel pretty bad for the guy that preceded me, and I've mentioned this before. Southwest Kansas did not help him last year. He did not get much money from our Southwest Kansas wheat crop. I planted 3,200 acres. I harvested 0 dryland wheat, and I harvested 125 acres of irrigated wheat. But there was 0 dryland wheat on my operation. First time I've had a complete 0 in March. So moving forward, on the evening of May 13th, 2023, that was the evening after my youngest son graduated high school, is what sticks in my head, and when it started raining. Over the next 10 weeks, we had 17 inches of rain. 10 weeks, 17 inches of rain. That was a lot to deal with. And you could see a lot of the guys around town, everybody was doing their best to remain grateful because of what we'd just come out of. But it was a challenge. So as you can understand, a lot of that rain came hard and fast. A lot of it wasn't able to soak in and do a lot of beneficial use. One of the huge disadvantages to a lot of spring rain on row crops primarily is corn, sorghum, bean, all these plants are lazy. They're only going to develop the roots that they think they're going to need. So if you just keep getting rain and rain and rain while they're in their infant developmental stages on up to, like at V5, 4-leaf corn, that's when the ear size is determined. But it's just getting rain and rain and rain, and it thinks it's good times. It doesn't develop roots. We'll get to that part in a minute. There was, where I'm from, it's very, very flat. I have fields that have 5 foot of elevation change for a whole section. One field, end to end, will not change in this much elevation. But it does have a few low spots and whatever. The low spots were 300% better yield than the high spots because the water fell in those low areas and didn't get on those high areas. So that's just to emphasize how challenging it is to use that much rain in a short amount of time. Yeah, huge yield differences. Like we're talking 120 bushel dryland corn to 10 bushel dryland corn with a 40 bushel average. Or same thing with sorghum. I had 130 bushel areas in sorghum field. I had 15 bushel areas in the sorghum field, and I might have a field average of 38, 42. So right about the time we finished up any wheat harvest that we had, it quit raining and the sun came out. Perfect timing, right? So the crops were disappointing, but we did have some crops to harvest, and we did get the ground covered, which was a lot of us, that was our priority, first and foremost. Before we tried to turn a profit, we wanted to get the ground covered. And by the way, the winter wheat crop we have right now is the best that I've seen it in 10 years. So expect a really good report from the wheat guys next year. It should be good because we're gonna crank in some wheat this time. I am really honored to be here. The Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission to share their report. I'm in my 3rd year of the commission. My first year was the COVID year, so I say it doesn't count. I really didn't know what was going on. I'm just looking at a screen trying to understand what they're saying. This is my first year as chairman. I got elected chairman in July. I'm really excited about sorghum right now. I'm really excited to be the chairman of Kansas Sorghum. In case anybody's wondering, Kansas is #1 in sorghum production, have been for many years, almost double of what Texas is. So any of you have Texas friends, feel free to let them know they're #2 and not by a close margin. The things that the grain sorghum's responsible for is education, market development, promotion, research and development efforts for the betterment of Kansas sorghum producers. So I personally take a great amount of responsibility in the management of the commission funds. I often ask myself and other commissioners, do we feel that this project will bring 10 times this dollar amount back to Kansas farmers? If the answer, if we cannot answer that question with confidence, then that project needs to go back to the drawing board or to the cutting room floor, because it's not worth messing with. If a constituent ever comes up to me and asks me why we moved forward on a project, I personally want to have 3 answers that I can give them to tell them why we felt it was good to move forward with. They're not all winners, folks, but I'm sure going to do my best, and the commission absolutely does their best to make sure that we're picking winners the best we can. One of my other favorite things about sorghum is Kansas Sorghum and the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission is we are team sorghum. We aren't as big as some of the other commodities and different things, and so we work well together, and that has been a lot of fun. And I mean, everybody from the state and the national boards and staff all work together for the betterment of sorghum kind. And at Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission, our funds are passed down from the USCP based on guidelines laid out by federal statute. We have continuously received a 25% passback from the USCP, and that's the maximum allowable. So I feel like I feel confident that they have faith in what we're doing as well, or they probably wouldn't give us the maximum amount of passback. Really appreciate the encouragement that we get from Tim Luss, the CEO, Norman Ritz Johnson, the Executive Director, and all the USPCP staff and board, which many board members are Kansans. The third leg of our sorghum stool is the Collaborative Sorghum Investment Program, CSIP, a partnership with KSU and KDA. CSIP is a collaboratively funded by the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission and the United Sorghum Checkoff Program. Sarah Sexton Bowser heads up that Center for Sorghum Improvement by working to best leverage matching funds with deserving projects, monitoring the progress and obstacles, and translating all the research requests and results into bite-sized segments that the Commission board can digest. The board leadership, staff, and affiliates continue working to be the best we can be. It is my belief that we are as strong as ever and eager to meet the challenges that lie ahead. It's often said that it takes a village. Well, I couldn't agree more, and this village works very well together. The 2023 crop, planted acres were steady from previous year at 3.3 million acres. Harvested acres were up 13% at 3.3 million acres. That's 184,800,000 bushels, with an average yield of 56 bushels to acre. There's been some ask about imports and exports of our crop. The approximate value of Kansas sorghum exports was $1.1 billion. The Kansas Sorghum Commission investments for 2023, here's a few high ticket items. There's an optimization of an in vitro regeneration to create sustainable sorghum weed management and controlling traits, led by Jugalum and Trick. The Felderhop Lab has developed a sorghum sugarcane aphid tolerant marker, which can be found in over 60% of the new U.S. sorghum hybrids seeds that will be in production this year. Research conducted by Chi develops markets for waxy sorghum with high pasting viscosity, and sorghum studies on sorghum-based feed for shrimp and tilapia in comparison to other feedstuffs, which in turn has led sorghum to be adopted as an ingredient in feeds for larger aquaculture industries, such as in Norway. So I personally grow some food-grade sorghum on my operation, and since 2017. Some of my earliest crops went into pop sorghum, like many of you received here today. It's kind of a neat item. It tastes good. In 2019, we had a new opportunity that was presented after some of the sorghum off my farm tested low in a metal called cadmium, a natural soft-like metal that has a lot of anti-corrosion properties. The levels of the sorghum on my operation tested low enough that they met export standards to the European Union. Then, later, a company approached New Life Market out of Scott City about getting a milled sorghum product to make a toddler puff that had to test low in cadmium. And since then, I've produced food-grade sorghum for that end user, and we've been able to average about $1 premium on that over the local markets. We just need that market to demand to grow, and more specifically, opportunities are available, and more specifically, specialty opportunities are available for Kansans. Kansas remains the second largest pet food producing state. Missouri is number one. As the pet food industry continues to grow in value, consumers continue to demand more from the ingredients in their pet food. Things they are seeking, ingredients that provide health benefits, align with their values and ethics, and are sustainable. Sorghum provides all of these for the consumer. Kansas and its sorghum farmers provide the pet food industry a prime place to expand production to meet today's pet food consumer needs. This committee is fully aware that Kansas is an ag state. This is something I am personally proud to be a small part of as a producer and a larger part of as a commissioner for the Kansas Grain Sorghum Commission. The 100,000-pound elephant in the room is water and the best way forward. I am very concerned for the future of my community. With oil and gas revenues declining, irrigated land transitioning to dry land tax base, and less people needed to work and care for the land, what does the future hold for the western part of the state? And any answer to that question, I believe that sorghum is a critical component to that solution. Kansas has several large livestock operations that require lots of fiber and protein and food to operate. Sorghum's lower water requirements for production make it a staple part of that future of a combined feeding and milking operation going forward. A way to quantify that or to put something with that is California will pay a 12% premium for ethanol produced purely from sorghum because of sorghum's lower water utilization, lower nitrogen utilization, and lower carbon footprint. In short, sorghum is the sustainable crop for today and all of the tomorrows. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you all my passion for Kansas sorghum. When appropriate, I'm happy to answer any questions, and any that I can't, I will throw back.
All right. Questions for Mr. Peterson? Representative Murphy.
No question. Just thanks for the trip down memory lane because we used to pop this when I was a kid.
You bet.
Very good. Representative Minix.
Since you brought the subject up, I'll put in a little commercial plug for New Life Market in Scott City, Kansas. They are a gluten-free plant. They pay local producers a good premium to grow sorghum for them. And it's amazing as I go through their factory, and Earl Romer would be happy to give anybody a tour at any time. They make things from popped to all kinds of flours for pastries or pizza dough or those types of things for people that have celiac disease, being gluten-free. There's an amazing market for them now on baby puffs. They will take sorghum and extrude it and come up with the little puffs that many children, infants, can tolerate far better than some of the wheat products due to the gluten in it. There's an amazing amount of products, and that's kind of where I was trying to point out earlier about the value added that all these commodities bring. And I've sit here and listened to all the different commodities, and they tell you about their specific one. And as farmers, we probably grow at least 3, if not 4 of these crops. These folks they're competing for the same amount of land, sunlight, water, fertilizer, and everything else. They're competitive, but they cooperate, and they get along really well, and they've helped us tremendously on things like the Farm Bill that the federal Congress is working on right now. And I want to commend everybody that presented today. You did a very good job. I was just trying to emphasize a couple points for them, but thank you.
Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Can you educate us on what are the challenges of feeding sorghum as opposed to corn? The differences, is it easier, harder, more efficient?
Thank you for that question. So corn is the old staple, number 2 yellow corn, right? That's what been fed forever. That's what everybody's comfortable with. That's also what the feed mills and the processing facilities are set up to handle. So the old rule of thumb was sorghum you might get 80 or 85 and sometimes 90% as much energy out of a bushel of sorghum as you would a bushel of corn, or out of a ton of corn silage versus sorghum silage. But what we're working on with some projects right now, some feed digestibility with ruminants, what we're working on is sorghum can be very, very competitive to corn, even on a 1-to-1 basis. If, for instance, when feed yards are feeding corn, whether it's wet corn or dry corn, they're cracking it, right? They have to break that shell. They have to break it so the animal can break it down and take in the nutrients. Same thing with sorghum. You have to crack it, except for corn might be as big as my pinky, and sorghum might be the size of your ballpoint pen. So the same set of rolls won't break that the same way. So if we do the work and we find out, okay, these are the size of rolls we need to have. These are how we retrofit your operation to make it work to where you can feed this. The best way to feed sorghum is distiller's grain out the backside of an ethanol plant. The second best way to feed sorghum that I've been told is if it's flaked. But a corn flaker, like I said, it's set up to handle a larger size kernel, won't work that great for a sorghum flaker. So we may have to make some retrofits to our feeding operations to make sorghum viable to be used. But given the landscape of water and everything else, I think it's something that needs to be, we're doing research on it. That's one of the first things that I said when I came on the commission is let's figure out how we can transition from being super, especially the dairy industry where I'm at, just super focused on corn and corn silage and how we can work into some sorghum and sorghum silage. Because in my mind, this is my simple mind, the way it works, if California will pay a 12% premium for ethanol produced purely from sorghum, what will they pay for milk produced purely from sorghum? So if there is some cost offset in that, there should be a different product available to be purchased by value added. And as Representative Minix was saying, I did want to add that everybody else was talking about the new production coming in and everything like that. It's just smart business that you do your raw product work as close as you can and you haul finished product out. So whether you're hauling renewable fuel out of a bean plant or whatever out of this corn plant, or whether it's more wheat production, or whether it's sorghum production and milling or flaking or whatever, you're adding value back to the state of Kansas. Those jobs are in Kansas, those tax bases in Kansas, those kids are going to school in Kansas, and all that develops back into the state churn when we keep those production jobs and processing jobs in Kansas.
Quickly, Representative Schlingensieben.
When you say sorghum milk, I assume you mean you fed cows sorghum and the milk that they produce.
That's what I meant.
Is there such a thing as sorghum milk, just like there is almond milk, soy milk, sesame milk now? Is there such a thing as sorghum milk?
Those are milk-based products, not necessarily milk. Those are milk-based products from those ingredients. The running joke is there's no teats on an almond. I haven't found any on sorghum either. But milk produced from cattle or goats or wherever you'd like to get your milk based on a sorghum diet solely is what I was referring to. Yep, I know you did.
And in lieu of time, we'll have one more question from Vice Chair Mosier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The speakers today referenced checkoff dollars. Farmers put in a certain percentage of their sales. Could you speak to the value of the checkoff program in your respective associations?
I think we want all four of you to
Yeah. Thank you.
answer.
Okay. Well, without the check, I mean, like, you wanted the actual dollar amount or what it means to the...
What it means to your
sure,
organization.
Absolutely. Well, for sorghum, without the checkoff and the commission dollars coming back to the state for us to do things, we wouldn't have a budget. Sorghum is kind of the low, corn and soy dominate the sales. So corn and soy have the most private industry researching corn and soy traits or genetic lines or product, whatever, to further that. Sorghum doesn't have that kind of dollar in that kind of money in its bag of seed, and so private industry doesn't spend that much money comparatively as the other crops do. So a lot of our budget is research and development. And, you know, I mentioned the Felderhoff lab, one of the main, this is one of the biggest advances we had out of K-State. Dr. Terry Felderhoff had identified a sugarcane aphid marker that helps with tolerance of the sugarcane aphids. Sugarcane aphids in South Texas, they have them every year. They're used to them. It's budgeted to spray. Where I live in the western part of the state and where I'm at, south of me, they'll probably have to spray from them. North of me, they won't. They're moved by the wind. It depends on where the jet stream is. It also depends, like, you know, two years ago when it was freezing cold in Texas, I knew we weren't going to have very many sugarcane aphids because it froze a lot of them. And so the winter and all that has to do with it. Now, Sumner County, they have to spray. I don't know how far they have to go. But that's another application that needs to be done. That's another pesticide that needs to be applied. What typically the sugarcane aphid tolerance will do will save you one spraying. So if you only need to spray once, you don't have to spray. If you're a place that might have to spray twice, you only have to spray once. That come from sorghum research along with K-State. That come with our money, and that is stuff that's absolutely put money back in the pocket of. And the other interesting thing is, we didn't license it to any one company. It was given to all of them to benefit all sorghum growers. So the commission is critical, or I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have the money without the checkoff. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you all.
Thanks for the presentation. Mr. Kiesling?
I'm glad I had a moment to think about that. You didn't get that advantage. I think a lot of it for many of the commissions is going to be research. For the majority of our budget, the biggest budget item is always research. So I was thinking about some of those. Wheat streak mosaic is a huge thing, and Hessian fly as far as diseases that affect wheat across the state of Kansas. And we were able to utilize in the Wheat Innovation Center a gene bank. Now that we've been able to bring in 10 years ago, we used to say joint grass is your friend. Joint grass is not my friend as a farmer, but there are genes in joint grass that we have been able to crossbreed with wheat in order to get disease resistance that we didn't have 10 years ago. So in that aspect, joint grass I can agree upon as being a friend. Variety selection through breeders at Hayes and in Manhattan and around the United States. Another thing that we don't always think about, but we were able to utilize some of our checkoff dollars to come up with a best management practices booklet. And it's a booklet that we use through our yield contests, and most of our commodity groups have yield contests, and we were able to put the best management practices of the winners of those groups in there. It says if you're irrigated, the majority of the winners did this practice. And that helped other farmers move up their management to a higher level. And then I would say communications is there. And the reason I put that there is most of you guys come from somewhat of an agricultural background, and all of us come from an agricultural background, but most of our consumers, the majority of our consumers don't. So whether it be wheat or the other commodities, communications always has to be there to educate that. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Oldie?
Yes, okay. Let's see. The USB, I believe they had University of Texas A&M. They did a study on this. And it was, for every dollar invested, it was $12.34 return, is what their study came up with.
Very good.
All righty.
All right. Mr. Moore?
Yeah, I think when you look at the value of a checkoff program, any commodity that's been up here, I mean, it gives producers a voice. It gives them the opportunity as an industry to do all the things that we've talked about today. And if that assessment wasn't there, then that voice isn't being heard. It isn't being heard at the state level. It's not being heard at the federal level. It's not trying to make inroads throughout the world to move agricultural commodity products. So the value in these assessments is that it gives Kansans, whether you're involved in agriculture or not, it gives all Kansans a voice to move economic products that our state is fabulous at producing. It gives them a voice to feed ourselves, our nation, and our world. That's it.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today and sharing the investments made by the commissions and then the checkoff. So very good. Thank you so much. That clock is fast. I guess we are about 2 minutes over, so we'll wrap it up. Just a couple of quick things. Reminder, we'll not meet until Monday. A chairman's error on getting the conservation bill in, but I believe we're still planning on the hearing. It'll just show up at a later agenda. It is still the plan, but I messed up. And when trying to get things in, I tried to move a little quicker than I probably should have. So with that, I do apologize. Other than that, we will have a full, a full half a week. I do want to remind you, if you want to learn more about what you learned today, you can go to Salina on Friday, so we will not be meeting, but the Commodity Classic will be going on in Salina. If you want to know if you're missing anything in the Kansas Legislature, I believe if you're at the, whatever hotel it is, Hilton Garden Inn at 10:45, you'll hear the chairman of the Ag Committee dribble on about all the good things that we're doing in our committee. So anything else for the good of the cause? If not, we will see you Monday at 3:30. We are adjourned.